Hello, everyone. We're just going to wait a couple minutes here. We're going to have a bunch of people jumping on, and I can't wait to get this thing going. But feel free to say hi in the chat. The chat's always available. It's off to this side, I believe. So you can always drop something in there. If you have a question while I'm going through, I'm going to have a little time for a question and answer at the end of all this. So yeah, just feel free, drop in any questions you have as it goes along, and if anybody has not muted themselves or they unmuted themselves on accident, please make sure to mute yourself. That's just like the one thing, because I know there's just going to be a ton of people on this call. So just be careful with muting and unmuting yourself. Save the unmuting for when we go through the question and answers, and if I call upon you. That's the one thing I ask. But feel free to just like say hi in the chat. You can talk all you want in the chat. If at any point you have a question, just know that there's going to be a question and answer at the end of it. And you can also virtually raise your hand during that part of the webinar. So looks like, all right, we got a pretty good quorum here already. Like I said, I'm going to give it a couple more minutes. Hello, everybody. Welcome. I hope you're having right now it's a beautiful afternoon, partly cloudy here in Southern California. I hope wherever you're tuning into the call from, I hope you're having a good day. I'm having my usual afternoon coffee, and yeah, we're gonna get this thing rolling here in a minute. Just as I figured before I get started, the whole idea with this was to get something that's like really helpful. This is something that just pops up for us all the time. This topic of how when you're not in a place geographically where things are really happening. Once again, just a kind reminder, everybody, if you find yourself unmuted, please mute yourself again. We just got to make sure, because otherwise what ends up happening is it'll be crazy. You'll see. So I'm going to do the best I can. I think everybody's kind of automatically muted when they hop on the call, but if you accidentally take yourself off of it, no big deal. Just make sure to mute yourself when you can. And I'm going to see what I can do to make sure. Yeah, it seems like some people are getting unmuted. Just before I get started with this, I'm just going to scroll through and make sure, just because I think it'll be less distracting for people. But yeah, we're going to go ahead and get this thing rolling. I'm so happy to see everybody on the call here. And for anybody who's tuning in after, welcome. This is going to be recorded, and we're going to share it afterwards. So you'll be able to have this handy for future reference. Once again, okay, I see some people who are unmuted. Once again, just to be a last reminder, if you have unmuted yourself in any kind of way, please just go ahead and mute yourself again. And yeah, but without further ado, I don't want to keep everybody waiting here. We got like 80 people on the call. I'm sure there's going to be tons and tons more that are jumping on. My name is John Kleinbell. I'm a producer, songwriter here in LA. I'm also director of music at Catch the Moon. And we thought that it would be really helpful to people, because we get this question all the time about how when I live in a geographic area where it's not exactly like a hot spot for whatever you're doing in the music industry, whether it be pertaining to licensing, pertaining to like networking with other musicians that you want to collaborate with. How do you go about reaching out online and taking on the whole idea of like online networking, like taking the skills that you would normally take to like, you know, your local clubs or just people that you meet in the scene. How do you take that and effectively market yourself online? So that's what this is all about. I hope it is really helpful to you. And like I said earlier, if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. I won't be answering questions as I'm going through, but there will be a question and answer at the end where you can virtually raise your hand. And I'll also be scanning through to answer any questions that are in the chat while that's all going on. So I'll do the best I can to answer as many questions as possible. But yeah, without further ado. So the first thing that I would say to anybody who wants to network with people that are outside of their geographic area, whether you're trying to network with people in LA or Nashville or Austin or some other Toronto or some other hotbed of music, is like identifying who are the people that you want to network with first. And that can actually be a little bit of a daunting thing, because there's just so many people that you could be working with. But I think it's important to get real clarity around like, who are the people that I really want to target with this? and B, it's kind of like it's like a shift in your mentality that I've found to be effective. When I know exactly the type of people that I want to work with, I then think about, well, who do I want to focus my attention on? Instead of thinking like you could get a list of different agencies that's like 500 long, and it's just like, well, it's almost like without focus. Maybe it's better to pick like 2 or 3 of them that you could focus on first and just be really intentional with what you're doing. I find that that's really helpful. Now, places to find targets for like people that you would like to maybe network with if you don't already have those, but you kind of have an idea of like the types of people that you would like to network with. Here's a couple things that I'd suggest. To join groups. That's like a huge one for me, is joining different groups. Facebook groups are a great place. For example, there is, if you make pop music, there is an awesome Facebook group called Make Pop Music. And it's basically like everybody's making pop music, songwriters, producers, all types. Making all different kinds of music in the pop genre. The guy who runs the channel, he has a great YouTube thing where he teaches people how to do a lot of stuff in pop production. So that's just one example of the thousands of groups that are out there. No matter what type of genre of music you're making, or like whether if you're trying to reach out to directors or people who mix, just depends on, like, there's different groups for all those people. And I guarantee you, if you want to network with people that are in LA, the major groups contain like some pretty heavy hitters. It just depends on like which groups you're targeting. But some of the groups that I'm in, there's some people that are pretty heavy hitters that you would definitely want to network with, and could potentially do so just through the Facebook group functionality. It's really cool. It breaks down some of the barriers to meeting people that you might otherwise have. The other thing that can be really helpful is attending like online seminars and webinars. Tons of them are free, tons of them are not free, but these are all opportunities to meet people online, both collaborating, basically like having the opportunity to participate virtually via chat. You never know who you might run into on the chat. You also don't know, depending on the guests, some of them might be open to receiving communication from people who are attending. So that's another great way. Just want to take 1 second here to plug an awesome virtual ticket that we have for an event. It's pertaining directly to Sync. We have a 2-day networking event called Sync Keepers. It's Sync Keepers Horizon. And we're basically bringing in people who are focused on success in licensing. And it's a 2-day event to basically absorb all the inspiration you want and like some real insights to help out your career in the sync world. And for anybody who wants to join that, right now we have a virtual ticket. I'm actually going to like paste the link up here. It's really going to be an amazing event. It's August 8th and 9th. I'm going to post the link right here for anybody who wants to check it out. But yeah, just like I said, like Facebook groups, events, webinars, really scour the internet for places that are good opportunities for you to participate. Yeah, it's a great, so Sync Keepers, it's sold out for tickets to attend it directly, just for anybody who's curious. But we have the virtual ticket, it's going to be awesome. There's a bunch of stuff that you're going to be able to take in. You'll be able to take in all the panels. You're going to have opportunities to throw questions that you have into the mix. Same thing might be the case with like song submissions, throw songs into the mix of the songs that will be pulled from for live feedback. So that's a plug there. But it's just like, honestly, that's like another great place for you to network online, is find these conferences that have an online portion to it. Like another one that's good is like the ASCAP conference. There's tons of panels and interesting things and ways that you could maybe network through those and get contacts through those online, basically like the online version of those panels. So scour that out, scour out the Facebook groups. Now, once you have your targets in mind, it's something important to keep in mind too, that somebody that you want to work with, you might not have a direct connection to them, but somebody in your network already might have a connection with them. And if that's the case, it could be something just as simple as to really just keep in mind like who you already know. Do you know somebody that could have an in with this person that you're trying to work with? And it's also it can kind of help too to think, oh, well, if I'm looking for music supervisors, and I have this friend and they have connections with music supervisors. What music supervisors do they know? And then you could maybe get an introduction through that, depending on your relationship that you have with them. So this is always like something to be thinking about when you're thinking about like online. It's like, and networking in general, you got to really leverage the power of the network you already have. And if you don't have a network, that's totally cool. You got to start somewhere, and you just start where you start. But just a tip, like sometimes it's like 6 degrees of separation between somebody you really want to work with and you. Sometimes it's literally like 1 degree of separation. There's just like one person that you already know, or somebody that might be easier to contact and build a relationship with. That's another thing to consider with that. So yeah, that's the next thing I wanted to talk about. Sorry, I just got a bunch of points that I want to talk about with this. And it's going to feel like a little bit of a brain dump. And that's partially why I think it's going to be great that everybody's going to be able to check this out afterwards, because it's going to be a lot of information I'm sending your way. But yeah, we'll just keep going here. So the next thing is like to really like kind of spend a little bit of time researching how to contact them. Because some people they're more guarded than others. It's really important to keep in mind, like being professional, and part of being professional is if somebody has a website for whatever it is that they do, and their contact page says like nothing but no unsolicited inquiry, please. It's probably not going to be well received if you just like ignore that and send them stuff. It's probably going to be better to find some type of introduction. But it's like starting to keep that stuff in mind, because it's just like one of those things that separates the people who are conducting themselves professionally and have a reputation for conducting themselves professionally, and the people who, sometimes it can work though. There's no rules with it, but I think that there's an air of professionalism that you want to take into the networking that you do. If that person is somebody who responds to that, there's going to be some cases where people don't really, that all boils down to their personality. It's like research how to contact them, but also get to know their personality. Are they the kind of person that isn't even going to write something that's stuffy? I'm going to just go ahead real quick and remind everybody, if you are not muted, go ahead and mute yourself. I'm going to quickly go through and scan to see if anybody, but I just want to make sure that we're not getting any feedback. I think I hear there's a couple people that aren't muted, so I'm just going to take a second here and scan through. Once again, for anybody who hopped on, welcome. This is awesome. So many people checking this out, and really grateful to have the opportunity to talk to you a little bit about this. So I think we got just about everybody muted. There might be somebody who's still not muted. If you aren't muted, I'd ask that you please mute yourself. Should mute yourself automatically when you join the call, but we're just going to keep going. So the next thing that I wanted to talk about is like some people, like I said, it's like research like how to contact them. Some people don't mind if you just directly contact people. Directly contact them. Some people enjoy if you just like reach out to them if they have like an Instagram account. They like it when you post on their comment on their story, or there is somebody who is muted or is unmuted that is making noise. So I'd ask once again, please mute yourself. Some people don't mind it. In fact, it's like the barrier is not there, and that can be cool. Because what the power of social media gives us is the ability to directly interact with people. And that is something that can be something that where some people just, they get overwhelmed with it, but other people are very active on social media. You'll find out how active they are on social media just when you start to interact with them. But somebody, for example, somebody who posts every once in a while is probably not somebody who's going to be checking they're probably not going to be checking their direct messages on their stories very often. They're probably not going to check their comments on their posts very often on Instagram. Same thing goes for Facebook. They might not check their friend requests, but like once or twice every couple of months. It all just depends on how engaged they are with social media. So you got to assume that there's all kinds of people with varying degrees of desire to keep their privacy, as well as just their ability to keep up and want to engage with social media. So there's going to be all types, and it can kind of help to know what that is. It can also inform whether it's good for you to continue trying through that format, or I definitely wouldn't suggest like bombarding anybody on social media. If you start doing it, just start doing it lightly. But it's like, yeah, just find out what presences that they have. Do they have a website? Their contact information? Do they have an Instagram profile? Do they have a Facebook account? Any of those things could be things like, and you'll find too, sometimes the power of having connections on social media can be helpful, because I just know from my own experience that if I know that somebody's giving me a friend request and that person has a lot of common contacts with me already, it's going to make it more likely for me to accept them as a friend. So that's another thing where it's like having some type of initial contact in common can be really helpful, even from like a Okay, so somebody, I just heard somebody's phone buzzing. Could you please put yourself on mute?
Dave P is here because I've got speaker, the speaker screen, and his screen is on all the time. It keeps popping in.
I apologize, but if there's any way you could mute, it really is distracting for the call. So I apologize, but we just gotta, there's like 123 people on the call, and I want to make sure that everybody gets the info and there aren't like constant distractions coming in. I apologize for any kind of technical issue you're doing. But yeah, just please mute yourself if you're on the call. Don't worry if you can't actually like hear what's going on. You could even like get the, we're going to be posting this later on. We're going to be sharing this webinar with everybody. So don't worry if there's some technical issue where you actually have to have your microphone unmuted. Just mute it and you'll be able to check it out later, please. So yeah, going to keep moving on here and talk about like, you know, as far as like social ice breaking, this is something that you can do online for sure. Now, the best way that I've found to kind of start doing some ice breaking, and you might want to do this before you make any kind of attempt to contact them directly, is just kind of, you don't want to be a stalker, obviously, but there is a certain amount of like, you got to assume that anybody who has a public profile, whether they have like whether they have a public Instagram account or a public Facebook account or just a website, they have a desire to be seen by the public. So that is an indication that they may be receptive to, they're definitely going to be receptive to people seeing what it is that they do and the things that they put. It's like social media is just like, it's your personal PR. So you're basically putting out their information that you're okay with the public taking in. So you shouldn't feel like a stalker by just going through and kind of seeing the things that they enjoy doing, just kind of the things that are going on their feed. So that's something that you should do. Naturally. Okay, so okay, cool. Sorry about that. I think Kathy helped out there with muting everybody who wasn't already muted, and then I think my microphone got muted there for a second. So like I was saying, there's an ice breaking thing that can happen where you can go in and start to see like what you might have in common with the person, and see if there's any natural organic conversation that could be started just by virtue of like how they're living their lives, especially people that are like very frequent posters on Instagram or Facebook. It could be something where like, you know, they like to go surfing, for example, and you're a surfer. Who knows, you might have like a really interesting conversation with them about like some really great waves you caught out in Costa Rica or something like that. They might have a picture of a place where they caught some waves and you caught some waves too. And then just based on that, you start a rapport. So look for opportunities in social where you could potentially engage. So that's like one way that you could start to like look for opportunities to break down the wall and start to engage their profile. You don't want to like bomb every single post that they put with stuff. You don't want to like respond to every single thing, but I would suggest just like starting lightly with it. You know, it's just an approach. You have to kind of feel it out. You know, if you don't get any response a couple of times or 3 times from like posting about this kind of stuff, posting about their story or anything like that, you can't take it personally. This person could be just like constantly They might have so many messages that they can't even respond to them, or just for whatever reason they didn't feel like responding. It's not one thing. Oh, you got to really make sure to take into the online world, because it's like, I think it's just like, in a way, it's like twice as potentially weird for you, is just like, don't take any of it personally. Like, that is one thing that I would really take into the approach of any type of relationship you're starting to build with somebody, or attempting to build, is like, there are some people that are not going to be receptive to hearing from you. And that's just a fact. It doesn't really matter what exactly the reason is for that, but at some point you have to say, oh, okay, for whatever reason right now, it's not a contact that I can really leverage right now, or build any type of win-win relationship with. Like I said, those kinds of situations can change depending on where you are in your career and the people that you know in common, and the relationships that you build with people that they might also have a trusted connection with. So don't give up, don't be discouraged, but start to do your research, figure out what it is that they like, they don't like, what things that are interesting, that are related in the industry that you can relate to, and then just start to engage them genuinely. You don't want to say stuff that you don't mean, but at the same time, everybody loves a compliment. I don't know anybody who doesn't like a genuine compliment. So don't be afraid to let that portion of your personality shine through, and just like engage them with kindness. So that's another thing I'd say. I talked about this a little bit, but the reality is we're all human beings. We all desire connection with other people. And I think that the more successful folks in the music industry have a team, and they're always kind of building their team and open to, some people are more open than others. Some people have their teams pretty well set, but some people are very open to continually questioning and asking, like, is there somebody really cool that I might be able to work with? So I think it's like, this whole thing in networking, it can feel kind of forced, like you're trying to interject yourself into somebody's life, but you really shouldn't think of it that way. You should think about it that, like, there are tons of folks out there who are highly successful that are always looking for situations where they can help people and that other people can help them. Which brings me back to, well, actually, I'm going to talk about this later, but not too much later. I'll talk about that later. The next thing I want to talk about is doing good work and coming highly recommended. So one of the things that you bring into whatever networking situation is you have certain assets. I would argue that the most valuable assets you have are your work and your reputation. You want to do the best work you possibly can, just like all around. You want to do excellent work. And you want to have good relationships with all the people that you work with as much as possible. I know, like, personalities can get difficult sometimes, and especially in the music industry, people can get emotional, but I think it's really important to have like good reputation, because what having that good reputation and that good rapport with the people you work with can do, it makes you somebody that they think of when they have a connection that might be helpful both ways for you and whoever the person is that they're thinking about. It puts you in their mind. This is somebody I really enjoy working with. This is somebody who's honest in business. This is somebody who does what they say they're going to do. So if you conduct yourself that way, it's actually like really something that, as your network continues to expand, it really can be an asset to you, as well as just the quality of your work, which has some to do with like your experience, has some to do with your talent, has some to do with like how hard you work and the people that you work with, your team. So your work and your reputation, do everything you can just because that's really like one of the assets when you don't already have connections and introductions. One of the things that can break down a door is just having something that's so amazing that it's like, it's hard to not want to say yes to it. In terms of like the quality of your work, the skills you have, that sort of thing. I feel like I would be remiss if I didn't talk about that. Next thing, I got a few more things here to talk about. I actually got another page and a half. Let me take a drink of coffee. Okay, so here's one thing to think about, is practicing your networking skills locally. And I know it's going to sound silly. It's like, John, I signed up for this webinar to know how to network with people like out of town. But I will tell you that the skills that I've learned from networking locally definitely translate to the digital world, because like what ends up happening is you'll make online introductions and then you'll have phone meetings with people. And then right then and there, a big wall is broken down, and having the ability to rapport with somebody over the phone or like in person, some of these online connections, people travel all the time for business. There can be opportunities to meet people in person. It's going to be really important that you have your skills, your in-person networking skills honed. And what better way to hone those skills but in your local area? Now, doesn't have to have anything to do with just your interpersonal communication skills. Can be developed in any format. It can be developed at like a charity auction or something like that. Some type of local event that's put on by the Veterans Club or something like that. I remember when I was young and I was learning how to present myself, I literally joined Toastmasters International, which is a great like public speaking organization. So it's like getting those personal skills down is really going to be key, because what's the point in getting like an online connection going if you can't really take it where it could go, if you're able to confidently relay what it is that you're bringing to the table, and be able to talk with them. So I feel like that's a really important thing that can't be skipped. Although you can learn as you go along as well. Like I said, there's no rules with this. So I'm just talking from my own experience with networking, both in person and abroad. I do both a lot. The next thing, perception is really key. So you got to make sure you're putting your best foot forward every time when you're talking with somebody who you haven't had any kind of engagement, especially if you get an opportunity to like hop on the phone or meet them in person. And sometimes like even getting the introduction is like, or being able to take it that far, if they only have a few seconds to get a feel for what it is that you're bringing, you got to make sure that everything's in alignment, everything looks good. As far as like your branding, like, so everything from your website, you want to have a website that looks cool. Some people don't check websites, but some people do. You want to have like a basic website. For example, if you're like a music producer, I can just speak for me. I have a website that looks modern. It has playlists that are easy to use. It's something that is, it works on both phones. It works on tablets. It works on, I'm forgetting the term for it. Anyways, it's a website that works on all different formats. So then I have an Instagram profile. It's very it's clear from looking at my Instagram profile that I'm a music producer. The things, responsive, exactly. Thanks, Levi. That is the term. I used to do web design for quite a while, but actually I kind of got out of that game right as smartphones started to become a thing. So it's kind of funny. Platform. I can't even pronounce that word. That's funny. Platform agnostic. Sure. So you got to make sure that you have all of your ducks in a row, so make sure you got your website looking good. You want to have your online business card looking ready to go. You want to have good examples of your work. You want to, if it's more like skills that you bring to the table, you want to have those kind of laid out in a format that's easy for people to understand. And then, you want to have your Instagram handle. You want to have Facebook. You want to have some of the basic tools that people are using. You could also use Twitter. I don't really use Twitter myself, but there's all different kinds of platforms and ways that you could meet people. But just make sure whatever platform you're using online, that you have a profile set up. It has your professional branding. As far as professional look, which is another part of your branding, is making sure that you have if it's important what you look like, which, I don't think it really matters what you look like, but I think people do like to connect a face with a name. It's good to have some decent pictures of yourself in your profile. And for example, if you're a producer, maybe some shots of you working with other people on your profile kind of shows your Instagram profile, I think in particular shows kind of what you're doing and what your day-to-day is like. So if the only pictures you have up there are just if you're a music industry professional and you're trying to conduct yourself as thus, and you open up your Instagram profile and there's lots of pictures of turtles and I don't know, just classic cars. It's not, people aren't going to necessarily associate you with music by seeing that. So if you want to have that kind of profile, that's cool. I love turtles and I love classic cars. But I think that like having that as like your professional level, I think it's good to have like a profile that represents you professionally, and then use that as one of your best foot forward as part of like that entire package that you're bringing to the table. So yeah, and this whole thing can be like, depending on your band or if you're an artist, just making sure that you have like all your graphics are kind of in alignment. If you have a logo, make sure your logo looks cool, professionally designed. Make sure if you have copy on your website that it's proofed. Make sure that it's to the point. You don't need to tell your whole life story. There's tons of great bio writers out there that you can hire that are reasonably priced if you need some help with the writing aspect of it, which goes back to, so this is the next thing that I want to talk about. Just take a breath here. The next thing I want to talk about is your subject lines. Subject lines and messaging. Like when you're communicating with people, I feel that just in my experience with it, I spend sometimes 5 or 10 minutes agonizing. I don't really agonize over it. I mean, agonizing is kind of like that's an exaggeration, but I give special attention to the subject line of things that I'm sending out, because in a way it is literally, especially if this is like the first point of contact with this person you're trying to reach out to, it is literally the very first foot forward that you're putting towards that person. So it's got to be super clear to them in potentially a sea of messages, who you are, what it's about. It's a matter of, you gotta find some way to cut through the noise. And we could probably talk for an hour about like different strategies you could take with subject lines. I've had people say, oh, this way is the best way, this way is the best way. I think if you're a good writer, you'll probably naturally find a way to express what it is you're trying to say in a way that catches the eye. You just also got to keep in mind that, and I'll touch upon this later, that you got to be persistent about things too, because I've known people, like I'm one of those people that I clean out my inbox like regularly, and I like having a clean inbox. I like seeing that screen on Gmail where it shows clear skies and all that stuff. But I also know tons of people where it's just they get the volume of email that they get coming in. It's just way too much for them to even check every day. And whatever account they give you might be one of those accounts where it's just like they check it every once in a while or something like that. And if that's the case, they might check it every couple of days, and then you might get bumped from the first page of the emails that are in the box. So one thing to keep in mind, anything you can do to kind of get your subject line to pop out can be helpful. So the next thing I want to talk about is just messages. You want to be on the point with things. If you're sending somebody something initially, don't send them more than one link. You might not even want to send them a link at first if you're not sure whether they even want a link. Just make your communication very to the point, no more than like 2 or 3 paragraphs, at the most short paragraphs. And just like, don't ask more than one question at once. Definitely don't send them an email with 3 links and like 4 questions, because somebody busy is going to open that up and they'll be like, it's going to take me like half an hour to even address all this stuff. What you want to do is you want to get like a quick rapport going. I know Kathy's talked about this all the time, like is just like literally just interjecting some of your personal life, like a cute dog picture or something like that. That's never been my approach with things, but I'm sure that could work too. The whole thing is you want to get is the mindset of like, how can I make this really easy to get a conversation going? And just like keep it light, make it easy for them to respond to you. If they are somebody who takes unsolicited music, send them your link and make it really clear when they open up your link, they can play the music right away. It's really clear what the splits are on everything. Make sure you have metadata in there, especially if this is like a music supervisor or some type of pitch company. just make sure that you have all your ducks in a row there, because that's part of putting your best foot forward with that, is because people don't, they don't want to have to take that extra step of asking you that question, because sometimes it's like it's enough time out of their day that they might not feel it's like I don't really have time for that right now, and then they might want to go back to it later, but then they have something else that gets pushed up, and then they're just like, oh, it gets pushed down in the email further and further, and then you missed your chance in a way. So you never know how this thing is. You want to make sure if you're putting a foot forward that you give them the information that they need. It's all there. It's easy. Disco, for example, is great because then they can press play. They can download the tracks if they want. You can even track if they download the tracks or if they listen to stuff. So it's pretty cool. You can send them their own personal link. So highly suggest using that when you're sending somebody music, but just make sure you have all the information that's in there, the things that people really want to see. Writer publisher splits with IPI and CAE numbers. They want to see master split stuff, and they also want your contact information kind of like bundled in with that, so that it's easy for them to reach out if like they have your music and then they stumble upon it later and they're like, oh wait, I can't remember where this came from. It's really good to have all that ready to go, like right off the bat. So these are just some of the things when you're building your assets, your online digital assets. You want to have this stuff kind of in mind for when you're putting that foot forward, because you'll just look like a professional, and it'll actually break down a potential barrier, because it's really easy for them to say yes. They don't have to say, hey, I like the song, but what's your info? It just makes it a little easier for them. The easier you can make it for the person that you're communicating with, the easier you can make it, the more you can make it like a hell yes to them, the more you can just make it like where you're being of service to them. It really like increases your chances of a successful contact, I feel. So yeah, it's like I was saying, subject line's got to be catchy, message to the point, make sure all your links work. Don't send more than one link. Even if you sometimes be careful with that too, because I've had a couple times where, and I've learned this now, you can't really have like, sometimes having like a link in your signature file can be really detrimental, because if you send them a link, but it also has a link to your website in your SIG file, it can be a real problem. Hang on a sec, I just got to turn this off. It can be a real problem because it'll get caught by a spam filter that otherwise it wouldn't get caught by. So that's why I was saying send one link per email. If you have one in your SIG file, take it out. Let's see. Oh yeah, prune your profiles. This is a big one. So it's like I was talking about earlier. You don't necessarily want to have like your personal profile as like the profile that you would engage people with necessarily. It might be fine. It might be a way that kind of like disarms them. But if it's like, it's also like, it's good to have like a professional presence on social media. So in the same regard, whether you have a professional profile or you have one that's like more personally bent, it's really important that you kind of prune out some things that are irrelevant, and prune out anything that could be potentially like just kind of eye-opening to whoever it is that you're reaching out to. Like it's not probably the best strategy to put strong political stuff on your social media that you're sending out to people, unless you're pretty well sure that they share the same values. It can just be a real hot topic. People get really passionate about political stuff. Probably not the best place to put like party pictures or things like that, unless like, once again, I mean, there's some people where it's like, maybe they're a little, maybe they don't care, but at the same time, there might be some folks that are sensitive to that kind of stuff. And I think it's like any way that you can, I'm not saying you have to censor yourself or anything like that, but I do think that social media to a certain extent is about personal PR and putting your best foot forward in an authentic way. And putting your best foot forward is like, some of these other things might make your message less clear. They might make what you're trying to get across through social media a little distracting. So what I'm saying is like, just prune out anything that seems like it's just the same kind of thing you wouldn't want. I would say the bar would be like anything you wouldn't want an employer finding on your profile. Just, whoever you work for, it might be a good bar. All right. So yeah, but just use your best judgment with all that stuff. Next thing is like just to be very strategic when you're communicating with people. One thing that I don't think works is like if you're just kind of generally contacting somebody, um, it leaves a level of vagueness to the entire proceedings that can leave the person thinking, what does this person want? So you never want that to be the case. You do want it to be clear fairly quickly what it is, like your intentions with everything. Once you start to break down some of the walls, once you start getting a rapport, sometimes you want to really quickly just get to the point and just say like clearly what it is that the potential relationship you'd like to build with this person, or like potentially setting up a phone meeting with them to discuss X and X. It's just like, just having clarity yourself, what it is that you're bringing to the table, which is also like probably the most important thing of it, is like knowing what it is you bring to the table and being able to relate that to somebody in a way that makes it clear to them and that they understand this is something that I can benefit from. And this could be a situation that could be good for both sides. Obviously you want win-wins, but you don't necessarily have to look for those all the time. Some relationships are win-wins. Some relationships are, it feels a little less even than that. It just depends on who you're working with, who you're talking to. But I find like the more people I work with that I have win-win situations with, it seems to attract more of the same. And your situation is going to vary. You're going to have different relationships with different people in the industry, and that's cool. But just whatever you're doing, just position yourself, try to position yourself confidently. It might not be your personality to do that, but know what it is you want before you go into these things. Because if you don't know what you want, it could potentially, they're just like, what are they, what's the whole point of this? Just how can you make it clear to them and make it an easy yes to them? I talked about this earlier, is just to be kind to people. I think this really boils down to like being professional, just being understanding. You don't want to be pushy. Like the last thing anybody wants is to feel like they're obligated to respond to you. So that's why if you are being persistent, which I would suggest, and I'll talk about that a little later, you want to like basically follow up with complete kindness, as if it mattered nothing to you that they didn't respond back after like attempting to contact them twice. Because you got to understand the context of things. The context is that you're somebody that they don't know yet, and they're figuring out like whether it might not be a good timing. Then once again, you might have gotten like blown out of their inbox by 3 pages, and they just, they feel bad about it, but they literally just didn't see your message. So you can never take this stuff personally. You can never say like, did you get my message that I sent? I'm not saying that you would even have that attitude with it, but like, I wouldn't go with like, hey, I sent you this email, blah, 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 and I didn't hear back from you. I would just reapproach, but always like with the initial one, it's just, you want to be kind. You don't want to be pushy. People don't respond well to that, I don't think. Building your network upwards is the other thing. It's like, I talked about this earlier. It's like the people that you run with are the people that you're going to rise up with. So if you think about it like that, and it's true, I know it's true because it's happened just so much for me in even the last 5 years. People that I was in a class with are all of a sudden like, doing really, really cool things, like all across the board, like running licensing companies, like having like major label releases, having huge spots and different placements with their stuff. Getting repped by different companies, just their songwriting's at an entirely different level. They have different connections with supervisors. Some of them have become major supervisors. It's just, these kinds of things can happen, but they happen from the ground floor. It's a lot easier to run with somebody who's at your level when you start out, and then building those relationships. You'll all kind of like, you'll be like, oh yeah, I remember that person. He was in class with me. That's already a connection. When somebody else that you already know kind of rises up, there's a potential for you to rise up with them, for you to share the success. You want to collaborate with your peers a lot. I feel like that's a huge part of it. But then once you do that, like those people may have connections to bigger stuff. You'll all kind of rise together. And that's what I've discovered with this. But it's like building your network where you're at, and then that can actually like lead to great opportunities to network, not only in person, but also just like, hey, you know, this, if you're in LA, you'd be like, oh yeah, I know this director in New York, and they're looking for music. They're looking for urban stuff for this new project that they're working on. And then your name will just kind of drop into the conversation because you have a tight rapport with them, your buds, or you've worked on some projects together. So don't be afraid to make friends with people. Don't be afraid. And I know it can be weird in the music industry. You want to conduct yourself professionally, but I really do feel too, you gotta kind of invest in the situations personally a little bit, with the people that you collaborate with, because these things, it's like, when everything is equal, you know, family treats family, you know, and friends treat friends well. So it's like, there's a certain aspect to that's like, you want to build genuine rapport with the people that are running with you, like wherever you're at. And then these kinds of things can really, really help out in the future. I've certainly found that to be the case myself. The next thing I want to talk about is just conducting yourself professionally. And we talked about that a little bit earlier, or I talked about that a little earlier. But it's just some other aspects that I want to talk about conducting yourself professionally. It's like, be prompt when you're responding to important messages. Don't let it go to voicemail. If you can, if somebody who's important calls you, it doesn't matter if you have nerves about it, just pick up the phone. You know, respect the boundaries of people. Don't continually contact people if they're not responding to your messaging. It actually comes across kind of rude. Spell check your communications. When you do get a chance to work with them in some capacity, you get a conversation with them online, see if you can find some way to start to take things off of just the internet, whether it's like hop on a phone and talk, or if they travel for business, maybe ask if they're coming to some conference or they're coming to one thing that would be great is like, you know, you could potentially see, oh, who's going to be speaking at this event that's coming up. And how might I be able to reach out to them ahead of time online, and then maybe set up some type of meeting, or just get your face in their kind of, you know, just in their mind. Get your face and what it is that you do in their mind before you might have potential ability to take that online connection and turn it into a real in-person meeting. So that's another thing. So when you make plans to talk, schedule them on a calendar, invite them to the calendar event. Don't take it personally if they don't respond, but I think it actually like looks really professional if you do that. Show up on time, even early. Be totally present when you're spending time with somebody, even if it's on like a FaceTime, or if it's just even on the phone. People can tell if you're trying to do your dishes while you're talking to them or things like that. And I know that everybody's got busy lives, but it's like, if you have the opportunity to talk to somebody that's important to potentially like game-changing important to your career, I would argue it's really important to practice that just in general with the people you work with, is just like really being present for your work. I feel like that's part of like having a good reputation, is like showing up for the business that you do with people. And then also just you build friendships that way. It's like showing up in like not just a business way, but also as like an authentic, living, breathing human being who laughs and cries and feels all these things and has a very rich life. You know, these are the types of things we want to take into our conversations we're having. The other thing, let me just see if there's anything else. Be totally present. And then just following up on when you say you're going to do something, do it. It's just like, yeah, common courtesy, like you're saying, Tony. When you say you're going to do something, do it, and don't make excuses. You might have an excuse that's valid for it, and people can be understanding, but just understand that, like, especially if this is somebody that gets bombarded with stuff and you get an opportunity, you may not get a second opportunity to send them something or something like that. They might think that it's a little flaky. If something really a serious emergency comes up, that's probably understandable, but just follow up and actually do the things that you say you're going to do. Even if it requires you like spending a lot of work that you weren't necessarily planning to do. I know that it's like one of those things, like being a person of your word is very important in business. I think it's important in life in general too, just to be a person of your word. So yeah, I think that's as far as, oh yeah, being persistent. Here's the other thing. It's like sometimes emails go to spam. We talked about that. They get lost in the shuffle. Facebook Messenger is a nightmare to keep up with because they make it so hard for you to really see what it is you've read and what you haven't read. Things get lost all the time in the shuffle for me, and I'm not even that popular. So it's like, it's just one of those things where it's like, if you're going to engage somebody on Facebook Messenger, understand that there might be a serious delay getting a hold of people, or it just might get lost completely and it's nothing personal. So sometimes you got to pop them an extra message reminder, but you don't want to be like, yeah, it's like if you don't hear back from somebody in a few days, you could hit them up again. I think you just got to feel it out. You can use a spreadsheet to track if you want, like the amount of time you're contacting people. I wouldn't suggest getting too like crazy about that, but it can be helpful to like kind of know who your contacts are, when's the last time you reached out to them, and then you could maybe reach out to them if it's somebody you haven't already like worked with before, but you might like to try. You could try reaching out to them like every couple of weeks or every month and see if you can get something started, but then keep track of it so you know how long it's been. Sometimes it takes like 3 or 4 times to reach through to somebody, and it can be really easy to quit after not getting a response the first time. So don't do it. All the time I have messages that I sent out that get responded to like 3 months later. And I thought that person was totally off the radar, and I might have even forgotten to follow up with them, but then they followed up with me eventually, and it led to some type of, like, I have a project right now that I'm working on which was something I thought was dead in the water. And they just ended up following up with me after it seemed like it was like dead silence for a few months. So you want to be persistent, and you could use an app like Trello. Trello is an awesome app for like project management and just kind of keeping track of things, making lists of people that you want to contact. You can kind of put them in different buckets of people that you might like to contact every month, or somebody that you might like to contact every couple of weeks. Or the thing that's great about Trello is that you can customize it to whatever workflow you want. And it's really cool. It translates from the phone to computer really easily. It's got its own calendar thing. It's great. That might be something that's cool to use to organize as well if you don't like using spreadsheets. The other thing is, don't be shy. Pick up the phone if they do have like some ability to contact them just over the phone. Sometimes it's better just to cut through the noise and just try. But it takes some courage, certainly, to cold call people. And you might, once again, you kind of have to feel that out, whether you feel like that's something that you obviously don't want to call somebody directly where it's just like a sales number or something like that. You probably don't want to do that. But if they have their contact information, if it's a music producer and they have their contact information just on their contact page, they leave their actual cell number on there. Once again, things that people put online, they put them on intentionally. So, it might be a better way of initially reaching out, because you might just be able to reach them directly than send them an email. Some people never check their email. So just something to think about. Any way you can kind of break through a wall. You get very little communication from somebody. I took a communications class in college, and it was talking about like direct communication, nonverbal communication, all of those things. And they talked about like how, sending a letter or email has like very little of the context and a very small percentage of the actual conversation that's taking place, because you don't even get the verbal cues, and you don't get the nonverbal cues either. But, if you get a situation where you can pick somebody up on the phone, there's a lot more information you're going to get, because you're going to get the tone of their voice. You're going to be able to gauge like their interest level when you're talking with them. And it's just like, there's just more communication that's happening. It increases your likelihood of maybe breaking through. I think that's all I really wanted to talk about in regards to just networking in general, and also just like any kind of networking that you want to do that's online. I feel like these strategies that I'm talking about and that I've gone over for like the last 45 minutes or so are all things that are going to be really helpful to you as you move forward with this thing. I did want to say, before we jump into question and answer, I want to just make one more plug here. We have an event coming up August 8th and 9th. It's called Sync Keepers Horizon. The event is totally sold out. We talk all about like syncing music, getting involved with and really elevating your game in the licensing world. We have all kinds of panels, all kinds of panelists, exciting panelists. I can't talk about them right now, but that is all going to get communicated very soon. We have a really stellar lineup planned and really great stuff, opportunities for people to have their questions answered by panelists, opportunities to potentially have your stuff listened to by people that are up on the stage. And we also have that opportunity. We're extending that opportunity. It's a sold out event, but there's a virtual ticket that we're selling. It's going to be, I think it's $79. And once again, I'm just going to like paste the link in there. You can go and get in on it, and you will have the opportunity to check out all the panels for forever. Oh, wait, I just sent something privately. Sorry about that. Let me just send this to, I don't know how I make it so it's not private anymore. Not sure. Well, I'm not sure exactly what happened there. It's a Zoom thing. I'm not sure how to change it from like sending a private message. Thank you. Send to everyone. Let's see if I can search for that. Everyone. Sweet. Thank you for the assist there. You rock. There we go. Yeah, so that's the link. It's going to be an awesome event. I'm going to be there. Kathy's going to be there, of course. There's going to be tons of really cool speakers and different things that are happening. There's going to be opportunities to submit songs to potentially get in the mix to be listened to by panelists. Same thing goes for questions. I know we're going to have tons of questions from people both in the audience and people that are online, and we're going to do our best to mix it up and get as many questions as we can answered for people, so that we can make it really helpful for everyone. So that's all I'm going to say for that. Check out the link if you want more information on the event that's coming up. We're really excited about it. But I'm just now going to open the floor to questions, and I'm going to answer questions here for a little bit. So if anybody has any questions, feel free to drop them in, and feel free to raise your hand, and we'll just kind of start to address them. So yeah, let me see. I'll just start scanning through the comments here, through the chat, and see if there's any questions. From what point would you stop the follow-up email? After the third no response or the fourth? Do you then call them after 1 month of no response? I don't think there's really like a game plan with it in terms of like, what's the formula for any of this? I think that it really just depends on the person. If the person is the kind of person that never checks their email, then you could send them 12 emails and none of them ever get through. So it's just one of those things where I would say you could just be persistent. If it's somebody you really want to work with, you might not want to give up for 6 months. I don't know, or find a different strategy. I think that's the other thing. It's like, if something isn't working and you don't get any type of confirmation from somebody that they're not interested in working with you or interested in communicating, it doesn't hurt to try a different tact. So if you find you just send out a ton of emails, but you're not getting any response, it doesn't hurt to like maybe try some type of other strategy. That's what I would suggest if you're not getting through versus in any one particular way. Can I talk about metadata? That's a very general topic that I probably won't touch upon right this minute unless there's no other questions. Let's see. Amanda, as a music producer, what are the most important assets that an artist can bring to the table when reaching out? I think it's a few things. I think having good songs, and having something that is already going. As an artist, producers like to work with people that have some type of following, and potential for, especially if it's like lower budget kind of stuff, potential for something to go viral, or for there to be a built-in fan base for the producer when they're working with them, to kind of like engage and have the artist release the music. I feel like that's part of it. Having good, like a really good song is also important. Having a lot of potential, maybe like any potential that hasn't been met yet, but it seems like there's talent and that the songs are good, and the talent level of the vocalist, if it's an artist that's like also a singer. It's just like, I feel like that's another important thing. Budget can factor in as well. I think that, honestly, some producers, they get to a point where they can't If you're talking about low-level stuff, they get to a point where they can't really do a ton of spec stuff anymore, or any spec stuff. And then it just comes into like, producers have to keep the lights on at their studio. They have families that they're trying to support. And so anything that they're doing and they're adding to their plate, which I don't know a producer that's not totally busy all the time. You got to have like something that's super compelling. Either it's an opportunity, or it could be just an exclusive opportunity that you have that might help leverage things. Budget, you might have a budget that's attractive to the producer as well. So I think those things, it's quite a few things, but then it's also just, as far as the assets, that's the most important thing. But then I think it just boils down to like the way you conduct yourself as well. You want to conduct yourself in a way that will be receptive to just like people in the industry in general, I think. Once again, you just want to take some of the same tactics that you take with the way you would contact anybody online as you're getting to know them. Maybe have like, just conduct yourself professionally, I think is what I'm trying to say. Let's see, we got any other questions? Unless you're the band, the Turtles. Let's see. You mentioned Facebook and Instagram. What about LinkedIn? I think that some music industry people are on LinkedIn. I've never really used LinkedIn to network with anybody. So I'm probably not the best person to ask about the potential of LinkedIn, but I do know that a lot of folks in the music industry have a profile, but they never check it. And yeah, I mean, it could be useful. It might not be. I would imagine the higher up you go in the corporate chain, probably the higher likelihood it is that has some type of impact or matters. But I also think it probably, not unlike Facebook and Instagram, if they have any kind of private profile, being added to their profile would probably require seeing some type of connection already in place through like a third party that they could verify of some type. I imagine like some of the same rules probably apply on LinkedIn, but I'm not an expert at that. Does John know that some people who signed up for the session didn't get the link? Yes, Tony, sorry about that. Sometimes people's emails go to spam, so that could be something, but we sent out the link about 10 minutes before before it. We're probably going to send them out a little earlier in the day next time. So apologize to anybody who got the link kind of late or anything. But we are really glad that you're with us. And for anybody who missed out on it, you're going to be able to check this all out. You'll be able to check it out. So we're going to send out a link to it. So let's see, any other questions that were asked earlier? Is this about pitching music to music supervisors and or libraries? This advice is about like any networking that you're doing in the music industry. So it doesn't matter if you're pitching music, doesn't matter if you're looking for people to sing on your project. It doesn't matter if you're looking for like a lawyer, you need some legal help in the music industry. I feel like these strategies that I'm talking about are helpful no matter what it is that you're trying to connect yourself to. So let's see. Got any other questions further down? As director of Catch the Moon, music director at Catch the Moon, what's the best way to submit music to companies like yours to get representation? So the way that we do things is we take submissions mainly from our students. So we don't really have like direct ways to submit music, just like through the website or anything like that. But we do all the time with our students. We give opportunities to submit music. We give monthly assignments and so on and so forth. So that's mainly how we bring new music in. We do have a roster of artists that we work with, and they continue to send us stuff as well. So that hopefully that answers your question. And also just like, yeah, I think that's the answer to the question there. If you sign up for Virtual Sync Keepers, is it being recorded? Yeah. So the virtual ticket, you get the recording for forever. Like we're gonna make it available so that people can just like watch it whenever in the future. Could you answer mentoring with music's question? Emily, if you don't mind just copying and pasting it or summarizing what the question is. I'm not sure how far up the list it is. Oh wait, here we go. I found it. Are there reputable composers who work virtually online who can reasonably and honestly produce music to bring them to competitive radio-ready quality? Solely online? You mean like you collaborate with them? Okay, so you're asking if there's people that you can hire out there that could bring your music to life they're composers and producers that you could hire or work with in some other capacity. I'm sure they're out there. Yeah, I mean, there's all kinds of sites that you can look on to hire people like that. SoundBetter is a good place. Just if you want to hire somebody to do something like that, that is certainly, I know that I work with people like all the time from like out of state. So I know a lot of producers do it. A lot of producers write long distance. A lot of producers produce stuff long distance. There's some challenges that come with that, but it's just part of the territory that every producer, some people prefer to stick to working with people in person. But I think that, yeah, it's like there's certainly reputable people out there that are open to working with people who are out of state or whatever, out of town. Let's see, Sarah, can people who just got the regular Sync Keepers ticket also get the link for the recording? We're going to be offering that. It's going to be a little extra because you'll get you'll get the virtual ticket like in perpetuity after the event. So yeah, it's going to be available for people who have in-person tickets, but there's going to be an additional charge with that. There used to be one where you could upload your tracks and collaborate. Not sure it's still there. I'm not sure what that's talking about. Oh, like some type of creative space. Yeah, there's probably lots of, well, Oddly is definitely a cool app, kind of out of the purvey of what we're talking about today, but it's a cool way to I've just recently started using it a lot just as a way to like a collaborative tool. You can keep track of writer splits and demos and lyrics and kind of the track in progress as it's being built out. It's pretty cool. Do you have any suggestions for someone who's looking to network in Los Angeles? Yeah, absolutely. Get out to some shows, get out to some shows. There's networking events that are happening like every week here. Just start to get plugged in as to what's going on. And if you aren't plugged in, kind of a no-brainer is just to go to like some venues that have music that you are either making music in or just like, yeah, it's like a known hotspot for that. For example, if you're a singer-songwriter and you wanted to come to LA, a good place to network and check out some really good acts and maybe like make some connections with like, if you're a singer-songwriter and you want to kind of level up, Hotel Cafe would be a good place to go, for example. But there's like all kinds of cool venues all over LA. That's it's a good question. I think that's one place I would start to look, and then also just kind of see what there's local LA groups that meet regularly for different reasons and different things. But there's always like something going on. So that's probably the first tip I would give is just like to go to venues, producers go to venues, artists go to venues, management goes to venues. I know this for a fact because it's like pretty much every single show I go to. I'm like, yep, I know that person reps that person, blah, blah, blah. That person plays bass for that person. Let's see, what other questions? Let's see. Do you think there's a big advantage to being in LA, or is networking online enough? I mean, I love LA. I think there's huge advantages to living in LA because LA is awesome, but not everybody likes it. So the weather's amazing. That's one big advantage to being in LA. But as far as like, I think it's like you kind of want to be close to where the action is if you can. If it's something you can stomach, some people prefer like a slower life. I like being around a lot of people, a lot of cool events that are going on. It's a real hub for creativity of all sorts here. I think it could be said for a few towns where that's the case. And it all just depends on like what type of music you're making and what types of connections you're looking to make. I know a lot of the licensing agencies have headquarters here in LA. There's actually a huge row of them that's down by the airport. It's just like, it's definitely like a big hub for like the licensing world. LA is. But there's tons of places outside of LA that's the case as well. So I think it all just depends on like, if it's an advantage to you, it really just depends on if you're making the kind of music that the people who live here, if the people you want to network with, they're mostly here, then yeah, I think the answer will kind of be questioned for you, or the question will kind of be answered for you. Got that backwards. All right, so let's see. We got any other questions here? Okay, Mandy. Oh yeah, I'm so happy to be here. By the way, thank you everybody for your attention and for being so. I am floored by how good everybody has been about like keeping themselves muted for the most part. It's been pretty much silent since the first like 15 minutes or so, and I really appreciate your attention with everything. But the question is, if you write and produce in different styles of music, is it best to present your catalog with different packages or as a whole? That's a great question. One thing that I do know, just from my experience, is that it's really rare that you find somebody who can do everything well, who can do everything at a competitive level. If you can do everything at a super competitive level, then there's no reason why you shouldn't be presenting your entire package. But if you do one thing way better than everything else, and you're really honest with yourself about it, it might be your best foot forward, might be to put that foot forward and a package like it's like a cohesive package of, you know, whether it's an EP or something like that of like, you know, if you do like some pop stuff, but you also do some singer songwriter stuff and you also do some kind of jazzy stuff. And out of all the three of them, the singer songwriter stuff is like by far and away the best of your material. It might be better to package that and kind of put that forward first to the people that would be receptive to that kind of music. Not to say that you couldn't then like take a couple of jazz tracks and send them along or things like that. But I think like it all depends on you just being strategic. It's like, is it going to be confusing for somebody to hear a playlist that has like 4 or 5 different styles of music potentially? They might hear music that they don't really care about, or they're just like, oh, this is really good, but the song that you chose to lead off with, it's in a different genre, isn't really up to standard. So I think that's a thing. I want to say, yeah, goodbye to everybody who's been on the call. Really appreciate your time, and hopefully I'll see you online at the Sync Keepers event. Yeah. Any other questions we got? I think I'll probably spend another like 5 or 10 minutes on this if anybody has questions. Let's see. Announcing the speakers. Yeah, we're going to be announcing speakers very soon. Let's see what else is going on here. I'm going to scroll up because we got tons of stuff here in the chat. Got that. Already answered that. Okay, let me see if there's any other questions. How do you sign up for Sync Keepers? Yeah, you can, Ken, you can totally do it for from New York. All you got to do is go to, I'll paste the link here again. Oh wait, that's a private message. Let's see, everyone, boom, boom. All you got to do is go there and you will get access to all the panels and everything that we're doing at the event. You get to check it out and have that on store in perpetuity. So yeah, check it out if you want. And then, yeah, I think unless anybody else has questions, let me see if anybody else has any questions. Okay, cool. We got a couple more. Any advice about the intro length of a song? You want to keep your intros pretty short, to be honest, unless your intro is just stunning in some kind of way. I mean, I've heard intros where I'm like, I wouldn't cut that ever, just because it's like catchy and you want like whatever that's part of putting your best foot forward. If putting the song's best foot forward is having like a 5-second intro, then that's cool. But sometimes putting the best foot forward is just jumping straight into the vocal. Because I think for a lot of people, the vocal is like 90% of what makes or breaks a song. Obviously, like the production has to sound like top notch and everything, but it's really going to be sold by the vocalist and the lyrics they're singing and kind of the top line. So the sooner you can get them to that, it can sometimes be helpful. That's my advice for intro length. You could also like consider if you have like if you have a song that you love, but you feel like the intro is too long, you can always cut a version that has a shorter intro. Let's see, what else should I focus on? Great question, by the way. What should I focus on in my website as a songwriter? Well, I think as a songwriter, it seems that part of the business is all about connections. Well, I think you gotta present yourself somehow. You know, you gotta, wherever you're at. I remember when I was like first starting out as a songwriter, I didn't have a lot of connections with anything. I didn't have any successes really to talk about. But you know, you work with what you have and you basically like present yourself with the best way that you possibly can in an honest way. And there are people that are really good at writing bios for people who don't have a ton of experience. and that's something that I might suggest doing if you're having a hard time like communicating some of that in a clear way. You might consider like bringing somebody on who does that for a living to help you out with that and help you out with kind of in a way like your copywriting is your branding. So you might come up with some ideas of like, oh, how do I make this? I think even if you're a songwriter, making your website look visually appealing, I think is cool. Like people want to work with cool songwriters, so make your website look cool. I think that's a part of it. Here's another one. I see your site is on Squarespace. Can that platform be enough to list your songs where they can be downloadable and have I don't really use Squarespace for like sending links to my catalog in any kind of way. My library, I use Disco for that. So I wouldn't suggest, I suppose, I don't know what Squarespace's functionality with that. I just use it as like a music player for people who want to check out my music and do that. Like, I just don't put my Disco directly onto Spotify, or not on Spotify, but on Squarespace. I'm sure there's a way you could probably do that, but maybe using some kind of embed code. But I think that can actually like really poorly affect the way that your website translates between devices. So something worth thinking about there. I would just use Disco for that. When collaborating with others, you don't always agree on how to move on with a song. Am I allowed to change a song production if they don't approve? Well, here's the thing. I'm not a lawyer, but my basic understanding of songwriting and kind of like producing music is that any stakeholders in the initial songwriting have the ability to yay or nay the initial production of a song. Once a song is produced, then it doesn't matter. Once a song is produced, then you can create a different version of it that, is just more in alignment with what you want to do. And, but it's like, it's a thing where I do my basic limited understanding of it is that you have a right of kind of like first refusal if you co-wrote a song. And also it's unethical. I feel like I totally agree too, with Sweet Strings at AOL there, that there's a certain aspect of an ethical aspect to it as well. You got to kind of like, it's one of those situations where I feel like it's really hard to come out of a situation like that as a win-win, but the best way you can come out of that situation is just by taking the high road. I really feel like, because I've had plenty of situations, especially when I was early on in collaborating with people. I really didn't have tons of them, but I did have a handful where it was like, this is really difficult. This person is like, I'm not really agreeing with them on how to collaborate. So I either did like the thank you next thing or, and just like kind of like left that. And I'm like, you know what, I'm good, and have faith that you're going to create cool new stuff with cool new collaborators. And there's and as far as like songwriting philosophy, I don't think that there's any limit to the amount of creativity one can have. So I have faith that I can always come up with a cool idea, even if that idea that I had that was written with that person, it's not quite turning out the way I want it to. I can always like make something on my own or collaborate with somebody where the synergy is really good. And I have tons of people where I can collaborate on that level with. So until you get to that point, you might feel like, oh, I gotta get this to work. And you don't have to do it. Trust me, you don't have to like make something work that's like not working in some way. Better to take the high road. You'll thank me later. This is my personal opinion on those kinds of situations. Let's see. Is it okay to present snippets of songs as opposed to the full song? And if so, what do you suggest as a snippet length? I think it's probably okay. I mean, you could probably present a reel of stuff if it's like a really good, well-edited reel, or the snippets probably, but why not like just post the whole songs unless you're like unless these are unreleased songs that you're really possessive of and you're afraid that people are going to steal. I don't know. I'd never really think of it that way. I'm like, if I want to like present this song as a whole to somebody, I think it's bad. I think people prefer to just hear the whole song if they want to hear it. But that's just what I would think if somebody sent me a song. I'm like, for example, if like somebody who wants to work with me as an artist sends me like a minute-long sample of whatever song they've written that they might like to work with me on, I'd be like, well, what's the rest of the song? So yeah, I'd give that advice. Let's see. Do you personally reach out for remote networking to Nashville, New York, or et cetera? Or does LA keep your plate full? I mean, LA does keep my plate pretty full, but I'm always like, the thing is there's here's the thing, like the major music making centers, people are always moving locations. People are always bouncing from one coast to another coast. There's conferences on both sides of the country and even in the middle. Austin, all these places, there's always action going on, and there's always like a free flowing movement of like people and like different projects and things like that. So there's always opportunities for me to meet people that are outside of the LA area. And I'm always looking to build. And I'm always like, one of the things that I enjoy most now on Instagram is seeing people that other people are following and just becoming a fan of like other people's music. And I'm like, whoa, that producer has such a sick, like, just like mind-blowing talent when it comes to like synths or whatever it is. And then I'm like, oh, that's somebody I definitely want to put on my radar for somebody I'd like to work with. And then I'll reach out to them. So it's like, I think that there's a certain amount of research that goes into it. And once you start to like engage social media, kind of change your mindset around it a little bit, it actually becomes really fun. And your network just kind of explodes, maybe a little out of control. You know, and then that's where it goes back to like, you start being selective, and then you start understanding the people that you're reaching out to. You start to understand them so much more because you realize, oh, wait, I'm getting a bunch of people reaching out to me. I understand that this is what it's like for people who are like pay grades, tons of pay grades above me, you know, and it's like probably times like 10. So then it's cool. It's like, in a way, there's like, as you continue to network, you get a feel for it all, and hope that helps. Let's see, Discogs. I don't know what Discogs is. I use Disco all the time. Yeah, Disco is the way in which I send music out for pitches and things like that, and it's the way it's also the platform that Catch the Moon Music uses to send out stuff. It's great. Make sure when you're in Disco that you put all your metadata into your MP3s. Including this is the one tip I want to give to anybody about just metadata. You want to include your writer splits, include your account names, the performance rights organization that you're affiliated with, and then the IPI/CAE number for each of those accounts. And then you want to do the same thing with publishing, and then you want to do the same thing with master splits. You want to just like lay all that stuff out there, and you want to have your contact information very clear in the comments. That's probably the most important thing when you're sending MP3s to people. You just want to make sure you have all that stuff in Disco. Really easy to find. People don't have any questions about it. If they pull it out years later, they can still hit you up. That's one thing to remember. Where can we find a song split agreement template? There's tons out there. You could literally just join one of these groups that I'm talking about, these Facebook groups, and I can pretty much guarantee that if you ask enough people, you'll be able to find a split agreement that you can work with. There's also legal forms that you can purchase. There's probably some that are out there that are free as well. I'm not a lawyer, so I wouldn't feel comfortable sharing the one that I have with anybody, because I'm not confident enough to send it out to everybody. But they exist. It's not hard to hire a lawyer to draft something up really simple either. Also, a plain written agreement that's in writing and signed is also like probably fine. You just have to have something that has like the gist of everything, very easy to understand. But from a legal standpoint, I think you'd probably want something a little more formal. Let's see. Any other questions? I probably got a couple more minutes here. Do we need to put the percentage of splits, or just make sure everyone's info is in the metadata? Yeah, I'd put the splits in there, because you never know how the splits are going to factor in. I think it's good for them. They're going to eventually need to have that information to pass along. So yeah, you gotta have that. Let's see. Any advice for networking in the US when living in South America? I just think it's the same rules apply to everybody. I don't think anybody's going to like, I just think it's like, maybe cause I think even we're roughly in the same time zone in America. So it's like, I think like we're pretty much geographically north-south from South America. So, I think maybe just like understanding like how time zones might affect certain areas of the country could be helpful to know. But yeah, I mean, I think that people are looking for music from all over the world. So just because you're in South America, I don't think it really matters unless there's like some type of language barrier or something like that. I guess that's the only thing, is just making sure that your communication is clear. Let's see. Oh, so awesome. We got somebody from Croatia. I love how global this whole thing is. So cool. Yeah, and feel free to, if anybody wants to like network with each other, feel free to drop your contact info in the chat here. I'll keep it open for a couple more minutes. Yeah, any other questions before I wrap this thing up? Okay, what question about that question about creating short clips of music? Were they meaning stingers or like a reel of your music? Oh, okay. So there's an app for doing that kind of stuff. Can you work with vocalist / writer if they are not ASCAP or BMI? Well, everybody's should be registered with a PRO. If you aren't registered with a PRO, you should be registered. Whatever country you're in is going to have their own PROs. I'm not sure how it works outside of the US, but you should have like some type of PRO representing you. I believe that ASCAP and BMI are US only. They don't admin anything outside of the United States. So like it's a thing where you want to be connected with whatever your local country's PRO is. So yeah, it's like sorry, I can't see your name, but it's like, yeah, Australia's got one, the UK's got one, Italy's got one. I'm sure they've all got their own PROs. Okay, well, if it's not, I'm not an expert with how PROs operate, so but I do know that they primarily work with folks that are in the US. And getting an affiliation is really good. I feel like that's one part that's like, I don't feel like it's a big deal to be affiliated, but it's just one of those things. It's like probably like the most basic club that you can belong to that kind of shows that you're a professional in the industry. If you aren't signed up with a PRO yet, you should probably get going on that, because if you want to be a serious music professional, you're going to eventually need it. And most of the time it doesn't cost very much to sign up. I don't believe it's necessary to sign up with a US PRO. Yeah, I know plenty of Canadian artists, and they're not registered with ASCAP or BMI. They're just SOCAN. Actually, there's SOCAN offices in Los Angeles, believe it or not. There's one like really close to where I used to do where my studio used to be in Culver City. All right, everybody, this has been awesome. I'm going to close it up for now. Oh, okay. So thanks for making that clear. So there's probably ways in which the PROs can kind of talk to each other. Where we can find more information on membership to Catch the Moon, just the Catch the Moon website, which I can paste a link to here, but it's actually really easy to find. Let me paste it in there though for you. If you would like information on what we do, what we're offering, I know that we're going to be opening up registration to something very soon. So definitely get on our email list if you aren't on our email list already. I think everybody who jumped on this call, we have your emails, and I'm pretty sure we're going to be communicating any information about like what it is we do kind of moving forward. And obviously we appreciate you joining us today. And yeah, hopefully this has been helpful to you. And that's all we want, is just like to help you succeed however we can in the music industry. It's something that you can totally do. It's really not that difficult. You just got to, like with some of this stuff, you just got to start practicing it in addition to everything that you're doing to get yourself to a level where your material is competitive, and either your material or your skills. If you're somebody who's like a supportive role in the sync world or whatever part of the music industry, you got to get your skills up, or you got to get your work up to a certain level. And then it's like the networking can really like help elevate all that as well. Cause then you'll have places to market your music. You'll have new people to collaborate with, and it'll just like be a huge part of your life. It's definitely like a huge part of my life every day. So hope it was great for everybody. Have a fantastic rest of your day or evening or morning, whatever time it is where you check this out. And I'm sure we'll do something like this, do more webinars in the future. I look forward to chatting with you all and answering your questions and seeing your smiling faces, the faces that I could see here. So have a good day.